Okay, this is the vlog for June 23rd. And before we get started, I noticed a weird thing just now. Normally there are three buttons on this side of the screen. One's camera, one is photograph, one is video, and then the third is one I think that I never use. It's like panoramic. I don't know how many guys are actually using their Surface Book for panoramic shots, but it's not there. I don't know why it's not there. I don't know what that signifies, but I have noticed that the picture quality seems, at least the color balance is better than usual. So, let's deal with the elephant in the room. I guess it's not really an elephant in the room if it's not obvious to you. So, new Gundam Breaker arrived in the mail today. It arrived this afternoon, but I was in the middle of doing a bunch of Warframe missions, so I didn't start playing it right away. So I have, in fact, only played it for maybe 15 or 20 minutes total. And of those 15 or 20 minutes, 2/3 were spent pressing the X button on my PlayStation controller to progress through a very slow sort of introductory scene because you go to Gunbray High School. The Japanese do love their portmanteaus. Gundam Breaker, Gunbray, that's... Anyway, there's a whole aspect of sort of a dating sim built into the game where you meet different girls, and yes, they're all girls, and you play a male character, and you don't get to pick what you look like or your gender. You get to pick a name. The default name's Kyosuke. I went with Keiichi for reasons that I could go into, but I'm not going to right now. And you meet your childhood friend. So there's that trope character, whatever you want to call it, archetype. She introduces you to the school and hurries you off to class. And then you meet a character who seems very straight-laced until she gets into her Gundam control pod, at which point she goes bonkers. She goes completely ballistic and wants to tear everything to pieces. So there's that archetype. I don't know if she's going to end up being a villain or if she's just going to be your team's berserker, but now onto the gameplay itself. Admittedly, this is just a tutorial stage, but I absolutely see now why people are complaining. The game plays very differently from the previous Gundam Breaker games. Its speed is actually not that different than Gundam Breaker 3. Like, the speed that you run around at and the speed at which you attack certainly seems to be roughly the same. That's not what slows the game down, though. What slows the game down is some honest-to-goodness, frame stuttering. But more than that is a little bit of input lag. I'm pretty sure this isn't due to me using a capture device, which creates just a touch of input lag. To put it in perspective, I can play Monster Hunter no problem. And that is a game where you really want to be down to the last frame of animation with when you press your buttons. Because it can mean the difference between getting a sweet hit on a monster or being thrown through a room by the same monster. So that input lag is pretty much inconsequential. The input lag in this game is much worse. There's like a half-second input lag in some cases when I go. Then a few seconds later, or feels like a few seconds later, a half second later is when my character actually boosts. So that's annoying. But that's not what I think the root of all of this is. Now, keep in mind, I've only played actual gameplay for about 5 minutes, but I can already see how this is going to be a problem for a lot of people, and it might be a problem for me. If you want to pick up a piece that's actually in the arena and equip it on your Gunpla, you move over to where the piece is, it's added to your inventory, and then using the control pad on the controller, you select one of 5 slots to equip that piece, and then you press up to actually swap it onto your Gunpla or down to drop it back onto the ground. That'd be all well and good if this was a slow-paced adventure game, but whenever a mission starts, it's like on. Like, there are your teammates are doing things, the enemy are doing things. I could hardly keep track of. So there's you and your teammates, there's the opposing team, and then there's the neutral forces that both of you are trying to compete to destroy as fast as possible. Which, again, I think I went into earlier this week. That's going to put a lot of stuff onto the screen, and the backgrounds in this game are much more detailed because they're designed to look like rooms in people's houses, you know, because they're model kits. So they're not actually space robots. They're toys of space robots. So the environments I've seen thus far have all been sort of a child's playroom or a toy store or a classroom. So the fact that these pieces are sitting around, and then you have to, if you want to equip them, you have to go over to them, press a button to pick them up. In all previous games, you just ran over the item and it was added to your total. So now you have to pick them up with an action. That means that the plus control pad, or whatever you want to call it, isn't used to select your suit's optional equipment like it was in the previous games. So, for example, if I have missile launchers built onto my shoulders, I have the missile launcher that I assign to one of the control directions on the control pad. This is how it worked in the old game, I should say. So let's say I assign it to right. If I want to fire the missile launchers on my shoulders, I press right once on the control pad, and that selects the missile launcher. And then the next time I press the optional attack button, I'll fire missiles from my missile launchers. You can assign up to 8 different optional weapons this way, which gives your mobile suit a whole lot of options. It gives you many different ways to fight. It makes the monotony of missions a lot less monotonous. If you have, say, a special attack where you go charging across the screen to grab a guy and then energize him and then toss him away, like the Shining Finger from G Gundam. If you have a special attack where you have a katana that you can slash out and create an energy wave that travels forward to hit multiple enemies, you could do that. The missile launchers, there were grappling hooks, there was one particular piece of equipment actually allowed you to drain health from your opponent and transfer it to yourself. That was a very popular move, and that piece of equipment made into a lot of my Gunpla. That's the gold frame backpack I'm talking about for you actual Gunplers out there. So, yeah, now you don't apparently have that. All the special attacks that you can use are EX attacks, which were in the previous game, but you built up meter to use them, and then once you use them, you had to build up meter again. It was sort of a cooldown mechanic because you had to hit X number of guys. Although at the highest levels, you were generally doing enough damage, especially when you were in a transformed state. You were building the meter fast enough that you would have a full meter by the time the transformation was done. And for the more powerful singular attacks, you could usually use the attack, and then within about 10 seconds, you'd built up enough meter to use it again. So they were very special attacks. The optional attacks you could usually use indefinitely, sometimes with a short cooldown, or a recharging ammo bar. But this game only seems to have the EX skills. And I don't know how they exactly work yet. But already I'm sort of thinking, well, now all these cool special attacks that I used to use that were staples, what am I even going to use the circle button for? That hasn't been revealed to me yet. It's different. I'm not sure that it's bad yet, although the input lag is very, very troublesome. I feel like that's something that something must be going on behind the scenes in that game to cause an awful lot of load on the processor for the input to lag that badly. But it just feels slow to respond, and then you have to be very methodical when you pick up different pieces. Now, I've heard already that if you don't pick up a piece, you don't have to worry, because all the pieces that drop automatically get picked up at the conclusion of the level, so you don't have to worry about missing anything. And I just wonder how often I'm going to use that swapping mechanic, because I'm really used to just having the mobile suit that I want to use and having the pieces that it's equipped with. And I just think that this is going to be a learning experience. The development studio is going to figure out that that's what people want. People want the experience that they see in these shows. Gundam Build Fighters, Gundam Build Divers, where you build your Gunpla and then you go on adventures with it. You're not actually swapping out parts in the middle of the adventure. It just seems ungainly. And I feel like it all stems back to a combination of Breath of the Wild and its inspiration, Skyrim, where you could pick up items all throughout the game world and start using them. And especially in Breath of the Wild, you were going through weapons so quickly that you were constantly grabbing new weapons, using them up until they broke, and then finding replacements. And that was the part of the game everybody liked the least. In Skyrim, when you find an item, you usually end up using it for quite a while before you replace it. And in some cases, especially myself, if you got your smithing up, you'd be making equipment for yourself that was way better than the stuff you would find out in the world. Anyway, I'm going to spend tomorrow morning I'm going to go on a walk down at Marymoor with a friend of mine who's going to be walking her dog in the dog park. When I get home, I'm probably going to play a lot more Gundam Breaker. And I don't know if I'm going to play it more tonight. I sort of want to relax, and it's getting a little bit late now. So we'll see. But I'll have more news tomorrow night. Until then, I'm Eric Spornitz, and tomorrow will be better, probably.